Hi everyone, today is really about getting more mobility in our thoracic spine, particularly in extension. This is an area that we find becomes very locked and rigid. We tend to move more from the lower back and from the neck rather than from the upper back. And think of things where you might be reaching up for something or even looking up when you're out in a city, and we want to extend the spine. But also when we go into some squat patterns and things that require us to lengthen the upper back like planks, if we don't have that strengthening and that ability to move into those zones, we're going to find it a hard position to go into our squats and our planks. It's really important before we do this workout that you do all your myofascial release stuff first. So we need to have flexible hips, flexible quads. We need to release the tension in the front of the belly, open up through the pecs. If you don't do that stuff first, you're going to find this a little bit of a challenge. So if you haven't done week one, please go back and do week one, do all of the workouts, and you still might have to do those continuing on for a very long time. So just make sure that you have done especially the pec release, the rectus abdominis down the front, and the front of the hips and the quads before you come into this. So we're going to start on the floor, and we're going to work through the upper back into an extension pattern. So what I want you to do is to allow your pelvis to settle into the mat, and I want the front crease of your leg to be on the floor, okay? So where your leg meets your pelvis should be nicely on the ground. What often happens if we're tight in the hips is that the front of the hips or the belly become on the mat. So you might have to wiggle your legs down a little bit and to really get that crease of your leg on the floor. You also want to bring a little bit of your bottom ribs slightly up. It's not that we're hunching, but we're just kind of gathering that up a little bit. And we're going to put the hands under the head. I want you to breathe into your upper back. Breathing in through your nose and expanding the ribs. And noticing when you exhale how the body just lengthens, even if it's just for a fraction. So breathe in. So you might find your body relaxes, your shoulders relax, and your head kind of lengthens away. In that exhale, we're going to start to lift up. So I want you to breathe in. I want you to look your eyes forward and let the head and shoulders just start to peel up. Okay, now if you go too high and if you lose that little crease of your hips on the mat or your ribs drop down, you're going to find some pressure in your low back. So I'm not going super high here, and I'm just checking in that that crease of my legs is still there. You notice how I've come down a little bit, and my bottom ribs are hugging up. Then I'm going to see if I can look my eyes and find that little bit of extension, and then come back. Now I want to make sure I don't just move the head, okay? So my eyes travel forward, and I'm keeping that little crease of my leg on the mat, my little bottom ribs, and coming up. The shoulders should feel like they move backwards a little bit and towards each other and then down. Now some of you will like that, some of you might like this position in a little bit more of a W. Okay, so take a breath in, bottom ribs connected, and there's a little bit of my belly kind of coming up. I'm not hunching it up, but I'm not dropping it down to the floor. Okay, so it's like the pelvis is kind of molding into the mat. And then I do the same thing, eyes going forward. Sometimes the tongue at the roof of the mouth can help us come into those extension patterns. So I'm really wanting to work the upper back and then come back down. If I feel the low back, I've either lost my position of the pelvis, I've dropped the ribs, or I've let the belly go. Okay? Peeling up, eyes, nose, chin, chest. And come down. Now I'm going to make this a little bit more challenging by tucking the toes under. And we're going to find a really good position for these arms so I can slightly weight bear on them. And I'm going to
push the knees down to lift the hips up. Once the hips come up and I've got that space, I want to tuck the pelvis a little bit 12. Okay, so we've learned that in our pelvic clocks. And then I want to lengthen the spine out from there. So I'm only lifting the head a tiny, tiny bit, but that's really working into my upper back. And then come back down. So press, have the toes under, press the knees down to lift the hips up, send the pelvis to 12 so the sacrum goes down, my belly goes up. My bottom ribs lift a little bit as my spine lengthens. This is really super hard. There's a lot of work on my arms. The shoulder blades are trying to come together gently. And release. Let's just do that one more time. Press into the knees, lift the hips. This should be quite challenging. Tilt the pelvis, lift the bottom ribs. I'm pressing a little bit into the arms just to lengthen my upper back off the mat. And release. And just to finish off, come into a little shell stretch. From here, I just want you to come into a little elbow plank position. And we're just going to do a little rotation here. So I want you to take your hand behind your back and just opening the shoulder, looking the eyes, and rotating gently. Okay, so you're probably not going to rotate very far, but this is again a bit of an upper back movement. Okay, so because my pelvis is back, I can't move my pelvis. Retract the shoulder blades, open up the shoulders, turn the eyes, and back down. And again, hand at the back. I'm going to retract the shoulder blades towards the spine, open the shoulders. Think of the wall exercise we've done where we had the spine against the wall and we were bringing the shoulder blades back to the wall. And rotate. So the shoulder blade comes back. You can see I'm not rotating very far. Okay, it's not a big rotation. And then just come out of there. And finally we're going to come from all fours. And we're going to grab the rib cage on the opposite side and guide it around. And then my arm is going to just come by my side here. So I'm opening that chest but with a long arm. And then come back. Grab the ribs on the other side. Rotate. Push the ground away a little bit. Retract the shoulder. Open up through the upper arm. And come back. Good. One more on each side. Grab the ribs. Push the ground away. Opening through the top of the arm. I don't want my elbow going back, but I want my upper arm rotating back. The shoulder blade is on the ground, my belly is in. Shoulder blade is around my back, not on the ground. And rib cage, rotating. And bring the shoulder blade to the spine. Open the shoulder. Turn the gaze if that feels appropriate. And release. And that you might have to work on quite a lot, okay? It's not an easy position to be in. As I said, do the myofascial release before. Make sure you have the core stability before you progress on to this exercise. Many thanks.